Right. Okay. So this one is actually, it's a little bit newer than I usually like to read. I usually like to read things out of copyright, but I quite liked it. It's very charming, and it's dead anyway. Um, so this is by the fantastically monikered Robertson Davies, a Canadian writer, described by the Washington Post as the most distinguished and original Canadian writer of his generation. William Robertson Davies wrote a prolific number of novels, plays, short stories, and essays. As well as writing, his career also encompassed working as an actor, a newspaper editor, and a Toronto University professor. This story shows him at his witty and most original best. And I think what he did was every Christmas would tell a story in his university, and then he collected them. So this, and maybe the title will give you a clue. The photo of him, yeah, you've seen the photo of him, you've actually shared it. There he is. There he is. Distinguished gentleman. I like him. I like him. I like his beard. I like his beard and his eyebrows. More hair than me. I think we are related. Right, okay, are you ready? Are you settled? The candle is lit, the blankets are tucked, the tea has arrived. And this is a story. And I don't look at the chat when I'm reading, so apologies in advance. Who's that at the bookshelf? The ghost who vanished by degrees. Some of you may have wondered what became of our college ghost, because we had a ghost, and there were people in this room who saw him. He appeared briefly last year at the college dance on the stairs up to this hall, and at the Gordy he was seen to come and go through that door. While I was reading an account of another strange experience of mine, I did not see him, but several people did. What became of him? I know. I'm responsible for his disappearance. I think I may say, without unwarrantable spiritual pride, that I laid him. And as is always the case in these psychic experiences, it was not without great cost to myself. When first the ghost was reported to me, I assumed that we had a practical joker within the college, yet the nature of the joke was against any such conclusion. We had had plenty of jokes. Socks in the pool, fish in the pool, funny notices beside the pool, pumpkins on the roofs, ringing the bell at strange hours, all the wild exuberance, the bubbling, ungovernable, high spirits and gossamer fantasy one associates with the graduate school of the university. The wit of a graduate student is like champagne, cheap champagne. But this joke had a different flavour, a dash of wormwood in its nature. You see, the ghost was so unlike a joker. He did not appear in a white sheet and shout, "Boo!" But he spoke to no one. Though a junior fellow, the one who met him on the stairs, told me that the ghost passed him, softly laying a finger on its lips to caution him to silence. On its lips, did I say? Now this is of the first importance. It laid its fingers where its lips doubtless were, but its lips could not be seen, nor any of its features. Everybody who saw it said the ghost had a head and a place where its face ought to be, but no face that anybody could see or recognize or remember. Of course, there are scores of people like that around the university, but they are not silent. They are clamouring to establish some sort of identity. The ghost cherished its anonymity, its facelessness. So perversely, I determined to find out who he was. The first time I spotted him was in the common room. I went in from my study after midnight to turn out the lights, and he was just to be seen, going along the passage of the upper library. But when I reached that space, he had gone, and when I ran into the entry, he was not to be seen. But at last, I was on his trail, and I kept my eyes open from that time. All of this place, you should know, last Christmas between the Gordy and New Year, our Gordy last year was on December the 17th. I first saw the ghost and lost him on the 21st. He came again on the 23rd. I woke in the night with an odd sensation that someone was watching me. And as this was in my own bedroom, I was very angry. If indeed it were a joker, he lacked all discretion. I heard a stirring, and I know this sounds like the shabbiest kind of 19th century romance, but I swear it is true. I heard a sigh, and then on the landing outside my door, a soft explosion and a thud. As though something had fallen, I ran out of my room, but there was nothing to be seen. For Christmas Day and Boxing Day, I had no news of the ghost, but on the 28th of December, matters came to a head. December the 28th, as some of you may know, is the Feast of the Holy Innocents, traditionally the day on which King Herod slaughtered the children of Bethlehem. In the Italian shops in this city, you can buy very pretty little babies made of sugar and eat them in grisly commemoration of Herod's whimsical act. I was sitting in my study at about 11 o'clock that night, reflectively nibbling on the head of a sugar baby and thinking about money, when I noticed that the lights were on in the round room. Troubles me to see electric current wasted, so I went out and set for the round room in bad humour. As I walked across the quad, it seemed that the glow from the skylight in the round room was more blue and cold than it should be, and it seemed to waver. I thought it must be a snow which was falling softly, and the moonlight which played so prettily upon it. I unlocked the doors, walked into the round room, and there he was, standing under the middle of the skylight. He bowed courteously. So, you have come at last. I have come to turn out the lights, said I, and realized at once the lights were not on. The room glowed with a fitful bluish light, not disagreeable, but inexpressibly sad. And the stranger spoke in a voice which was sad, yet beautiful. It was his voice which first told me who he was. It had a compelling cello-like note, which was unlike anything I had accustomed to hear inside the college, though our range is from the dispirited quack of Ontario to the reverberant splendours of Nigeria. The magnificent voice came from the part of his head where a face should be. But there was no face there, only a shadow, which seemed to change a little in density, and as I looked at it, I knew it was unquestionably the ghost. There was no joker, no disguised junior fellow. He was our ghost, and like every proper ghost, he was transporting and otherworldly rather than merely alarming. I felt no fear as I looked at him, but I was deeply uneasy. You have come at last, said the ghost. I've waited for you long. But of course, you are busy. Every professor in this university is busy. He is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is on a journey, or a peradventure. He sleepeth, and none has time for an act of mercy. It was pleasing me to hear the ghost quote scripture. If we must have apparitions, by all means, let them be literate. You have come here for mercy, said I. I have come for the ordeal, which is also the ultimate mercy. But we don't go in for ordeals, said I. Perhaps you can tell me a little more plainly what it is you want. Is this not graduate school? Said he. No, indeed, this is a graduate college, but the offices of the graduate school are elsewhere. Don't trifle with me, said the ghost sternly. Many things are growing very dim to me, but I have not wholly lost my sense of place. This is the graduate school. This is the examination room, and yet the voice faltered. It seemed to me that it used to be much higher, yeah, much less handsome than this. I remember stairs, very many stairs. You had been climbing stairs when you came to me in my bedroom, said I. Yes, he said eagerly. The stairs to the top and went into the examination room. And there you lay in bed, and I knew I had missed it again. So there was nothing for it but to kill myself again. That settled it. Now I knew who he was, and I had a pretty shrewd idea where, so far as he was concerned, we both were. Every university has its secrets, things that are nobody's fault, but which are open to serious misunderstanding. 30 or more years ago, a graduate student was ploughed on his PhD oral. He must have expected something of the kind, because when he had been called before his examiners and given the bad news, he stepped out on the landing and shot himself through the head. He said, whether truly or not I cannot tell, that since that time nobody is allowed to proceed to the presentation and defence of his thesis unless there is a probability amounting to a certainty that he will get his degree. Here, obviously, was that unfortunate young man, standing with me in the round room. Why here? Because before Massey College was built, the graduate school was housed in an old dwelling on this land, and the examination room was at the top of the house, as nearly as possible where my bedroom is now. Before that time, the place had been in the home of one of the Greek letter fraternities, Mao Kao Mu, I believe it was called. The examination room you knew has gone, but if you're looking for it, I fear you must go to Tepperman's wrecking yard, or whatever remains of it is there. Is this not examination room? Said the ghost. I nodded. You, by all that is merciful to examine me, he cried, to my embarrassed astonishment, threw himself. My feet. Examine you for what? I said, for my Ph.D., wailed the ghost, and the eerie, agonized tone in which it uttered those commonplace letters made me for the first time afraid. I know no rest when I was in the world of men, because I was seeking it. I know no rest now as I linger in the threshold of another life. Because I lack it, I shall never be at peace without it. I've often heard it said that the PhD is a vastly overvalued degree, but I had not previously thought it might stand between a man and his eternal rest. I was becoming as agitated as the ghost. My good creature, said I, rather emotionally, if I can be of any assistance, you can, cried the ghost, clawing at the knees of my trousers with its transparent hands. Examine me. Beg you, examine me now and set me free. Quite ready to. Just a minute, said I. The papers, the copies of your thesis. All ready, said the ghost in triumph. And though I swear that they were not there before, I now saw that all the circle tables in the round room were piled high with those dismal, unappetizing volumes, great wads of typewritten octavo paper, which are PhD theses. Be reasonable, said I. I don't suppose for a minute I can examine you. What is your field? What's yours? Said the ghost. And if a ghost can speak cunningly, it is exactly what this one did now. English literature, I said. More precisely, the drama of the 19th century, with special emphasis on the popular drama of the transpontine London theatres between 1800 and 1850. Most people find that discouraging and change the subject. But the ghost positively frisked to one of the heaps, drew out an especially thick thesis, and handed it to me. Shall I sit here? He asked, pointing to the red chair, which, as you know, has a place of special prominence in that room. By no means, said I, shocked by such an idea. Oh, I had so hoped I might, said the ghost. My dear fellow, you've been listening to university gossip, said I. There are people who pretend that we put examinee in that chair and sit around the room in a ring, baiting him till he bursts into tears. It is the sort of legend in which scientists and other mythomaniacs take delight. No, no. If you will go away a few hours, say until tomorrow, 10 o'clock, I shall have the room set up for an examination. You shall have a soft chair, cheek by jowl with your examiners, with lots of cigarettes, unlimited water to drink, a fan, and a trained nurse in attendance to take you to the examinees WC and bring you back again, should the need occur. We are very well aware here that PhD candidates are delicate creatures, subject to unaccountable metaphysical ills. The ghost broke in impatiently. Rubbish, said. I'm quite ready. Let's get to work. You sit in the red chair. I'm perfectly happy to stand. I think I'm pretty well prepared, and as I said, this I swear that something like a leer passed over the shadow of what should have been his face, and I'm ready as soon as you are. There's nothing for it. The ghost had taken command, and I sat down in my red chair, my chair, and opened the thesis. Prolegomena to the study of the Christ symbol in the plays of Thomas Egerton Wilkes. I read. My heart, which had been sinking in the last few moments, now plunged so suddenly they almost lost consciousness. I've heard of Wilkes. It is my job to have heard of him. But of his 50-odd melodramas, farces, and the burlesque extravaganzas, I've not read a line. However, I have my modest store of Professor Craft. I opened the theses, riffled through the pages, hummed and awed a little, made a small mark in the margin of one page, and said, well, suppose for a beginning you give me a general outline of your argument. He did. 45 minutes later, when I could get a word in, I asked him just where he thought the Christ symbol made its first appearance in My Wife's Dentist, or the Balcony Bow, which was one of Wilkes's dreary farces. He told me. Before he had finished, he'd also given me more knowledge than I really wanted about the Christ symbol in Woman's Love, or Kate Winsley, the Cottage Girl, Raphael the Reprobate, or The Secret Mission and the Signet Ring, the Ruby Ring, or The Murder at Sadler's Wells, and another farce named more simply Bamboozling. By this time, I felt that I had been sufficiently bamboozled myself, so I asked him to retire while the examination board, me and only me, as the old song puts it, considered his case. When I was alone, I sought to calm myself with a drink of water, and after a decent interval, I called him back. There are a few minor errors in this thesis, which you will undoubtedly notice during a calm rereading, and a certain opaqueness of style, which might profitably be amended. I'm surprised that you have made so little use of the great Rarium edition of Wilkes, published by Professors Fawcett and Pale of the University of Bitter End, Idaho. Nevertheless, I find it to be a piece of research of real, if limited, value, which, if published, might be, yes, I shall go so far as to say will be, seminal in the field of 19th century drama studies. I congratulate you. It will be a pleasure to recommend that you receive your degree. I don't know what I expected then. Perhaps I'd hoped he would disappear with a seraphic smile. Sure enough, there was an atmosphere as of a smile, but it was a smile of a giant refreshed. Good, said. Now we can get on to my other subjects. Do you mean to say that 19th century drama isn't your real subject? I cried. When I say I cried, I really mean it. My voice came out in a loud, horrible croak. Sir, said he, it was so long ago since my unfortunate experience at my first examination that I have utterly forgotten what my subject was. But I've had time since then to prepare myself for any eventuality. I've written theses on everything. Shall we go on now to history? I was too astonished and horrified by this time to be afraid to say anything. We went on to history. My knowledge of history is that of a layman academically. There is nothing worse, of course, that can be said. But Professor Kraft did not wholly desert me. The first principle, when you don't know anything about the subject of a thesis, is to let the candidate talk, nodding now and then with an ambiguous smile. He thinks, and you're counting his mistakes, and it unnerves him. The ghost was an excellent examinee. That is to say, he fell for it. And I think I shook his confidence once with a little laugh when he was talking about Canada's encouragement of the arts under the premiership of W.L.O. Mackenzie King. But finally, the 2 hours was up, and I graciously gave him his PhD in history. Next came classics. His thesis was on the concept of pure existence in Pelotinus. I don't want to hear about it. But I must pause long enough to say that I scored rather heavily by my application of the second principle of conducting an oral, which is to pretend ignorance and ask for explanations of very simple points. Of course, your ignorance is real, but the examinee thinks you're being subtle, that he is making an ass of himself, and this rattles him. And so laboriously we told through the liberal arts and some of the arts which are not so liberal. I examined him in computer science, astronomy, and medieval studies, and I rather enjoyed examining him in fine art. One of my best examinations was in mathematics, though personally my knowledge stopped short at the 12 times table. Every examination took 2 hours, but my watch did not record them. The night seemed endless. As it wore on, I remembered that at cockcrow all ghosts must disappear, and I cudgelled my brain to remember whether the kosher butchers on Spadina keep live cocks, and if so, what choice we had of hearing one in the round room. I was wilting under my ordeal, but the ghost was as fresh as a daisy. Science now! He positively shouted as a whole new mountain of feces appeared from, I suppose, hell. Now, I know nothing whatsoever of science or any of its forms. If Sir Charles Snow wants a prime example of the ignorant artsman who has not even heard of what wretched law of thermodynamics, which is supposed to be as fine as Shakespeare, he is at liberty to make free with my name. I don't know, and I don't care. When the ghost moved into science, I thought my reason would desert me. I needn't have worried. The ghost was as full of himself as a ghost can possibly be, and he hectored and bullied and badgered me about things I'd never heard of, while my head swam. But little by little it was, when the ghost was clattering animatedly about his work on the rate of decay of cosmic rays, and they are brought into contact with mesons, I realised the truth. The ghost did not care whether I knew what he was talking about or not. The ghost was a typical examinee. And he wanted 2 things and 2 things only. An ear into which he could pour what he believed to be unique and valuable knowledge, and a license to go elsewhere and pour it into the ears of students. Once I grasped this principle, my spirits rose. I began to nod and smile, to murmur appreciatively. When the ghost said something especially spirited about the meiosis function of the formation of germ cells, I even allowed myself to say, bravo. As if he had come upon something splendid that I'd always suspected myself, but had never had time to prove in my laboratory. It was a great success. I knew that the dawn would could not be far away, for as each examination was passed, the ghost seemed to become a little less substantial. I could see through him now. I was happily confident that he could not and never would see through me. As he completed his last defence of doctoral dissertation, I was moved to be generous. A distinguished showing, I said. With a candidate of such unusual versatility, I'm tempted to go a little beyond the usual congratulations. Is there anything else you fancy? A diploma? Public health, for instance, or perhaps something advanced in household science? But the ghost shook his head. I want a PhD, and that only, said he. I want a PhD in everything. Consider it yours, said I. You mean that I may present myself at the next convocation? Yes. When the registrar kneels to take upon him the good degrees granted to those who are forced by circumstance to be absent, I suggest that you momentarily invest him with your ectoplasm, or whatever it is that people in your situation do, said I. Oh, I shall. Oh, I shall, he cried ecstatically, as he faded before my eyes. I heard his voice from above the skylight in the round room saying, I go to a better place than this, confident that as a PhD I shall have it in my powers to make it better still. So at last, as dawn stole over the college, I was alone in the round room. The night of the Holy Innocents had passed. Musing, my hand stole to my pocket and pulling out the sugar baby, I crunched off its head. Was it those blessed children, I wondered, who had hovered above me, protecting me from being found out, or had it perhaps been the spirit of King Herod, notoriously the patron of examiners? All things considered, I think it was both. Great spiritual forces watching over me during the long night. Happy in the thought that I was so variously protected, I stepped out into the first light. The last crumbs of the sugar baby still sweet on my lips. The Ghost Who Vanished by Degrees by Robertson Davies. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed it as a story. I think it was utterly silly, and I like the reverse nature of it. That is why I picked it for tonight. That it was, it was daft. It started, I think. Anyway, you tell me what you thought. And you don't have to like the story, excuse me. You don't have to like the story. I do. So you don't have to.